My name is Susannah Schoolman. I'm the founder and CEO of Tourlami.
And I'm Laura Cronin. I am the executive pastry chef of 11 Madison Park, and you're listening to
Ingredient Insiders.
This is Ingredient Insiders. I'm John Magazzino.
And I'm Andrea Parkins.
On each episode of Ingredient Insiders, we'll be talking with chefs and food authors about their favorite ingredients.
We then speak to the producer of that ingredient to learn how it's made, its history, and why chefs love using it in their kitchens.
On today's episode, Andrea, we're going to be talking about a cool new product called Tourlami butter.
It's a plant-based butter.
Yep.
It's kind of revolutionizing the both savory and sweet world from, kind of a vegan perspective.
A lot of I hear plant-based and I get a little cringy because a lot of those products they're not necessarily better than the non-vegetarian version of them. This one happens to be like a clean product, really well made. I actually happen to find it better than traditional butter for a lot of things.
Absolutely.
And Susannah Schoolman, who's going to be joining us, is really smart, really passionate, really well-spoken. And
her pedigree is amazing. I mean, if she's worked at some of the greatest bakeries, pastry shops in the world. So
right.
if, someone like her is, creating this plant-based butter, it's good.
Yeah.
And you also know it's good because we're also going to be talking with Laura Cronin, the executive pastry chef from 11 Madison Park, who's using the butter every day.
Yeah, universally. I mean, I kind of would say if it's good enough for 11 Madison Park, it's probably good enough for just about anybody.
Yep. I would say that 100%.
So this is going to be a great episode talking all about Tourlami plant-based butter.
This season of Ingredient Insiders is brought to you by Bazini Nuts. Bazini is the brand of choice among chefs in the finest hotels and restaurants. Their legacy of quality extends to gourmet retail stores, specialty boutiques, grocery distributors, and delis, ensuring you have access to their extensive range of consumer retail packages. It all started in 1886 when Italian immigrant Anthony L. Bazini began selling nuts by the pound to bakers, street vendors, and individuals during the Great Depression. But Bazini Nuts isn't just about peanuts. They offer a delightful array of nuts like cashews, almonds, pecans, pistachios, hazelnuts, and more, plus a tempting selection of dried fruit, including apricots, cranberries, figs, dates, prunes, and tomatoes. So whether at the ballpark, in the kitchen, or indulging in some well-deserved self-care, choose Bazini Nuts. With a legacy spanning 137 years, they're here to serve your needs with the same consistency, reliability, and quality, making them an iconic name in the world of nuts and dried fruits. Bazini Nuts, tradition, quality, and taste all in one. Taste the legacy today.
This episode is in partnership with the Chef's Warehouse and produced by Gotham Production Studios in New York City. This is going to be a great episode. I can feel it already.
I think we've started.
Did we start?
We started. This is like this. I love when all four of us are in one room versus like the chef and then we talk to the vendor. Like we're talking to everyone. There's so much energy here. We have two badass women here.
Amazing. We've got a Michelin 3-star pastry chef here. We've got an entrepreneur who was in the kitchen, a great pastry chef, now turned businesswoman. That's why I know this is going to be an amazing episode.
Yeah. So we have Susannah Schoolman.
Yeah.
And Laura Cronin.
Yeah. So Susannah Schoolman from Tourlami. And Laura Cronin from 11 Madison Park.
Yeah,
Let me go back. I mean, let's start. First of all, Susannah Schoolman is the founder of Tourlami, who's making this amazing vegan butter that we're so proud of at the Chef's Warehouse. And then Laura Cronin just happens to be the executive pastry chef of a little restaurant on Madison
just a little
Avenue called 11 Madison Park.
wall.
If you haven't heard of that one.
Yeah.
Like 3 Michelin stars, 4 stars from the New York Times. And it's, interestingly enough, entirely vegan restaurant now. How long has that been the case?
Ever since we reopened in 2021.
So like kind of a post-COVID decision.
Is there another Michelin 3-star restaurant in the world that's entirely vegan now?
To my knowledge, no.
No. Incredible.
Was that a challenge for you as a pastry chef?
Absolutely. I mean, I think like obviously for the savory kitchen, it was a big challenge as well. But I think in pastry to know, okay, there's no more eggs, no more butter, no more cream. And I knew there were some alternatives for some of these ingredients, but I was definitely most nervous about eggs and being able to do like our laminated bread that we've been doing for years. So definitely a little nerve-wracking in the beginning, but I think once we started going and once we started R&Ding, and we did have time because the decision was made in 2020, so we kind of already knew. So we had a little bit of a head start to start the R&D process and see what's going to work, what's not going to work. So I felt by the time we reopened, felt pretty comfortable with the direction we were going in and the ability to be able to like execute desserts.
Susanna, we're going to talk to you later, but I have more. Like when Laura starts talking,
just sit
my
tight.
brain just like opened up thinking about your traditionally trained pastry chef.
Yes.
So all of those things you just mentioned, eggs, cream, butter, animal fats, whatever, lard, anything. That's what you grew up, honed your skills on, and all of a sudden you're thrust into the world of veganism or vegetarianism. I don't even know how you like contemplate that, like the change.
Did people
I
leave?
Been so
like were
nervous.
people like, I'm not gonna do it, I'm gonna stick to my...
No, I mean, I think the beauty of like, so the decision was made during COVID pretty much.
Yeah.
So really there was nobody there at the time. There were just a handful of us there at the end, like at the end of the summer of 2020. And we were all well aware that this was what was happening. So it's not like there were a bunch of people already working for the company and then they said, oh, forget it, I don't want to do this. And then they left. We all came into it again, knowing that this was the direction. And it was a direction that was kind of spoken about even before COVID, like maybe being vegetarian or, I feel like chef is always looking for ways to kind of like challenge us for sure. Yeah. And I think it was kind of like a creative decision in the beginning of saying, okay, let's take away all these animal products and like, let's still maintain a 3-Michelin-star restaurant, but plant-based.
Yeah.
So I think that was, so we didn't have to worry about like if people were going to leave because they all came on knowing that this was the case.
Would you put your head on your pillow at night and lay there and be like, how am I going to make, I'm making this up, a croissant or a cake like moist and delicious without adding
eggs, butter, cream,
like
milk,
yogurt, whatever it is?
Well, I think the beauty of also working at EMP is like ever since I started there, before we were plant-based, we always had to accommodate any allergy or aversion. We've had tons of people come through the restaurant that were vegan. We had vegetarians. We had, all kinds of people with all different dietary restrictions. So we already had a little bit of a foundation to build off of. We already had our version of a plant-based ice cream. So it was really just like taking all of that and like reopening that recipe and saying, okay, now how can we make it even better?
Right.
How can we make it even closer to the texture of ice cream or the flavors that you would normally get from an ice cream? So I guess we had a little bit of a starting point there. But yeah, I mean, I was nervous about the bread for sure. That was because it's a laminated bread. So similar to like a croissant, thinking to myself, like, what butters are we going to use? Like, what is even out there? A lot of the plant-based butters, especially at that time, were like these spreadable butters that at room temp are like not super stable. They melt quickly. So yeah, I definitely didn't know a lot about it in the beginning. And just had to do some research. And we started trying to develop our butter, but the butter that we were working on was intended more for butter service, not for butter to use in especially baked goods.
Right.
In the savory kitchen, they use it a lot. They use it for like finishing sauces and stuff, but for pastry, it wasn't applicable really, just in a few things.
Yeah, and if you're working at EMP, you need to find the best of all of those things to replace butter, cream, eggs. So I'm sure like you were kind of on this mission to test every brand, every type.
Yeah.
And I think also, if you're talking about something like butter, when you're making laminated doughs, it has to be cold.
Mm-hmm.
So finding something that can structurally, work was probably, what did you do before you met Susanna?
We did honestly blends of different butters. A lot of things were based in like chickpea, like aquafaba, coconut oil, some like cocoa butter mixtures. We also did use the sunflower butter that we are using for our butter service. So we just kind of had to like make our own combination of this and that and this because the flavor was the big thing too. A lot of them don't taste amazing. Mm-hmm. Some of them taste like coconut. Some of them, they're all just very different. So I think, just finding that perfect blend and also having the right, just being the right consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask you a funny question.
Okay.
How did you two meet?
I guess Instagram maybe is when she first reached out to me. And then I feel like around the same time, I think Chef was also mentioning it and Mike. Mm-hmm. So, and I guess it was just through that. And then you came to the restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 4 years ago.
Yeah, go ahead,
my
Andrea.
phone rang.
Yeah. Uh-huh. You gonna try to steal my thunder now?
I am.
Because I thought I okay, go ahead,
Okay.
Andrea. Go ahead.
My phone rang and it was a number I didn't recognize,
you answered it.
And I answered, which I usually don't do.
Yeah.
And Susanna was on the other line, and she was telling me that she was starting a plant-based butter company.
Now, let me interrupt for a second.
Mm-hmm.
How the hell did you have her phone number?
Yeah.
Usually people call me, Andrea.
I know. I was like, I'm like the female John Magazzino today.
Wow. I think that when I was first starting the company, so I have been a baker for over 12 years. I've been in this industry, and I first really started my career in New York City, so I had a lot of contacts just with the restaurant that I was working at, the sales reps that we were working with through Chef's Warehouse. So when I ultimately moved back to the city to start the company, to start Tourlami, I was like, okay, great. I need to reestablish the connections that I had had. So I started talking with, other pastry chefs that I had worked with, just people on teams from, my past. And, then they gave me Jimmy Casey's number.
Jimmy Casey, there's the connection.
That's the connection.
Jimmy Casey made the connection.
Yes.
Jimmy worked with you when you were working
at Lincoln
Restaurant with Richard Capizzi and Jonathan Benno.
Yeah.
How did you decide that you needed to make plant-based?
Yeah.
Are you a vegan yourself?
I am.
Okay.
I've
How
been
long have you been a
plant-based
vegan?
for over 7 years now. Yeah. So, it's kind of a long path to, where I am now. But really, I always knew that I wanted to be in this industry from a young child. I think that I was one of the really lucky ones. I was like, I know exactly what I'm going to do, and I know exactly how I'm going to do it. So I went to a culinary school, even during, it was a 4-year, I went to a university that had a culinary program because I didn't want to go to it.
You can promote that university.
Yeah, I went to Drexel University in Philly. And so that's when I really started working in kitchens. I stayed in Philly. I'm originally from New York. I stayed in Philly my first year over the summer, and I had my first restaurant job. And then from there, I'd worked in a bakery, a hotel. So I really, and then I had my internship at Bouchon Bakery in New York City, which is how I met Richard Capizzi, which is really what kind of started me in the kind of bakery side of it. And then when they opened up Lincoln, that was it corresponded with me graduating from college. And so then I joined that team, and then I helped open up their restaurant. So I'd worked with Richard. I'd worked in the city for about 2.5 years, and then I moved to San Francisco. Belinda Leong of Bee Patisserie was in the early stages. She was about to open up her bakery, so I was connected to her, and then I was on the opening team of Bee Patisserie, and then I was with the team in San Francisco, so I helped open up Bee Patisserie and then Bee on the Go. At Bee on the Go, I became their head baker, head of pastry and viennoiserie, and then I moved to Hawaii to help them open up Bee Patisserie and Kona Coffee Purveyors. And right before, and then after I worked at Bee Patisserie, I was with the company for almost 5 years. Then I moved to Copenhagen, and then I helped Richard Hart, formerly of Tartine, and Renee Redzepi of Noma open up Hart Bakery as their head of pastry and viennoiserie. So So after
Very modest resume.
Yeah, I was like, yeah.
Wow.
So, so right before I had moved to Hawaii 7 years ago, I just kind of cold turkey went plant-based. There was a little bit of like a transition time when I was trying to figure out, how I could make this a sustainable, life for me to be living. But right when I moved to Hawaii, I started really thinking like, okay, now my personal and professional lives are really at extreme odds. And I wanted to try and think about how I could, take the techniques that I had learned, the connections I had made, my love and desire and passion to be in this food service industry, and then make a plant-based, pastry line.
I want to
incredible.
know, Andrea said she's going to take me to 11 Madison Park, so I can't wait to experience it.
Laura's going to get us a reservation,
was I thinking
she said.
that, or did I,
yeah. Yeah, she already
you
said.
said you were going to pay. I'll get the reservation. As long as you're paying, that's fine.
She said it was comped.
Oh, okay. What are you doing at 11 Madison Park with the butter? I think there's a lot of chefs out here that listen to us that are, definitely interested, but they're like maybe a little scared or intimidated to make the transition. I'm curious to hear exactly what 11 Madison Park does with Tourlami butter.
Yeah. So,
did I say that right?
No,
I
Tourlami.
didn't. 15 minutes of practice this morning. I got out of the shower this morning. I stood in front of the mirror and just kept saying Tourlami, Tourlami, Tourlami. And now I said Tourlami.
Don't even say it. Don't even say it.
Tourlami.
Don't even say it.
I'll say it.
Tourlami.
Sorry.
What are you doing with Tourlami?
Okay.
What's Tourlami? No, I'm just kidding.
So we are using it in our bread service, which I said before is like a laminated dough. We are using it pretty much, honestly, everywhere in pastry at this point. We did a slow transition because I wasn't sure like how it would work and everything. So I was like, okay, before we just like go cold turkey and just do this, I want to make sure we're good and we're not gonna, have any issues along the way. But we did not. It transitioned well to our bread. I think I reached out to you for a few questions when it came to proofing of the bread, the temperature, and like how long do we chill the dough. But we totally figured it out. It just took a little trial and error, but it's been great. We're using it in like all of our doughs, like our sucre doughs that we do for some tarts. We're using it in the rye dough that we use for our carrot tartare for the PDR. We use it pretty much anywhere we need butter in pastry is where we use it. Buttercreams, everywhere. And then I think, and this was actually a really exciting discovery, and maybe I'm like jumping the gun here, but I realized that it makes brown butter amazingly.
Okay, we need to talk about that. We're going to talk about it.
Like amazing. Because so the savory side of the kitchen was not using it, right?
And when you say it, so there are the two different butters, right? There's Tourlami Premium, which is like your high butterfat butter.
Yeah.
And then Tourlami All Purpose, which is more of like your bulk butter, cookies, cakes, ganaches. Are you using both of the butters?
Both.
Okay. And then in these different applications. So in your bread service, it's Tourlami Premium.
Yes.
And then for, like your other pastries and desserts, you're using Tourlami All Purpose. And same with the savory.
Yes. And we were also using it in our croissants for our Bake It Nice, which was really exciting. But getting back to the amazing discovery, that was really cool because one day, I don't know why, I was just like, why don't we just try brown butter? You cannot do brown butter with any other plant-based butter. And if you can, like somebody tell me, because I've not seen it. And it's something that we've definitely tried. But one day I just did it and I brought it over to some of the sous chefs and I was like, try this. It tastes like brown butter. And everybody was super excited about it. And I swear, I think like that was the moment when they started using it.
Oh, I love that.
And I don't know that they, like, we were even like clarifying it.
Yeah, you can clarify the all-purpose.
It was really cool. So I actually am doing R&D for the fall menu and it does include the brown butter.
That's so cool.
Really exciting. But that was
awesome.
That was kind of an amazing discovery because if you taste the flavor, like the flavor of it is really nice just as is. But when you taste it as brown butter, it has like a very similar smell to, like, I don't know.
There's nothing like brown butter.
I'm just thinking about white truffles now.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, please.
Brown butter.
Oh, my God.
Did you have that in mind when you were like creating the recipe, that you wanted something that, could be clarified, could like the I don't want to say milk solids, but it perform in the same way that like a milk solid would caramelize in a brown butter.
Yeah. So, when I was really thinking about both of the butters, so one of the things that I wanted to do when I was really thinking about the applications of the butter was the pastries and desserts and savory applications that were actually going to be used, which is why I created these two different butters, because I do feel like these other plant-based butters on the market just have this kind of like, I say it's like a one-size-fits-all applicational use. They say that you can spread it on toast, you can put it in sauces, you can make buttercreams, you can make croissants, and that's such a it's a wide spectrum to be able to use. And so it's kind of like yes and no. Yes, I was really thinking about the applications that I wanted these food service professionals to be using the butters for, but it was just like a really awesome add-on that you could clarify this butter, that you can brown this butter, because it's, when you look at, and I think that this is, it's a pretty complicated question, because like when you look at other plant-based ingredients that are on the market, a lot of these plant-based companies that are doing well have very specific products that have one very specific functional applications, right? So I've mentioned this a lot when we look at like plant-based eggs. There's a hard-boiled egg. There's an egg that has a runny yolk. There's ground beef. There's ground lamb. There are chicken nuggets. It's not like here's a whole cut of plant-based beef that you can grind and then turn into, hamburgers. And so I didn't really I wanted the products to be very specific with how you're using them. And I knew that dairy-based butter is this amazing product that has fat, it has water, it has milk solids, it has sugar. You can do so many things with it. And I just went into it knowing that I might not be able to hit all of those things, but it's really awesome to see that people are exploring, experimenting, working with the butters, and then doing a lot of the same things that they could do with dairy-based butter.
John, it reminds me of our Graham Reserve butters. So, you're talking about an all-purpose butter, which in my mind, I immediately went to our 80%, which is kind of the everyday butter. And then maybe the premium, I think you call it?
Yeah, Tourlami premium.
So that kind of reminds me of our 83 or 82%, which are higher fat butters that are used more for laminated doughs and more pastry applications. So like, this is like a real...
Yeah, I want to get back and talk about specific ingredients of what the butter's made with.
Oh,
because
yeah.
I think there's also a perception now in the world that plant-based products have a lot of crap in it that aren't actually very good. I want to go back to that, but first I want to hear more about 11 Madison Park and what you guys are doing. You talked about the breads. Did you find that...
Did you bring us anything?
I know that...
I know, I'm sorry.
I know. How dare you show up here without breakfast?
Get out.
That's all right. It's not that far. We can take a cab over after this. Do you have lunch plans? Yeah. So...
Do now.
Obviously you had to do testing. Is there a big difference between using Tourlami? I said it right.
He did.
Tourlami and traditional butter. Are the ratios really different? Is there, how is it when you're going to make the transition? How do you recommend chefs look at that? Obviously, there's going to be experimentation. I know Susanna is very generous about letting people have samples to practice and things like that.
That's a great question, John.
But thank you, Andrew. That's why they pay me the big bucks. How different are they?
So from regular dairy-based butter to Tourlami, I would say I have had to, I guess that's hard to say because I don't really take like non-plant-based recipes and try to convert them so much. Kind of have to think about it and approach it in a different way. But I would say, like, for example, this menu that we're on now, we're making this special glaze for these cookies, for our black and white cookies, and that some of the butter is in there, and I did have to add less of the butter compared to the last time we made those cookies was, I guess, 2018 maybe, before we were plant-based. So I guess that's probably the only example I can think of where I had to like
you dialed it down a little bit.
Yeah, we dialed it down a little bit. Yes. But for like the butter block in our lamination, it's the same. Yeah. So we are not using less now that we're laminating with plant-based butter. Yeah.
Amazing. So it's almost identical in that regard.
Yeah. What are the ingredients in Tourlami?
Yeah. So Both of the butters have similar ingredient lists, but there is a slight difference between the butters, which is why I don't consider them to be interchangeable with the functional uses. So Tourlami Premium, so basically both of the butters have cocoa butter and coconut oil as the main saturated fats. And then safflower oil is the unsaturated fat, water, a little bit of sugar to emulate lactose, salt, people ask me if it's a salted butter. It's technically, there's salt in it, but I consider it to be an unsalted butter. The salt is just to help give it kind of a well-rounded, buttery flavor. I haven't changed any of my recipes when it comes to the salt percentages. And then, the highest quality beta carotene to give it that color, and then really, really high quality flavor that we're working with. So it's a really clean label. It was really important to me when I was creating the butters. It was something that I wanted to be able to eat every day and feel comfortable, consuming that. So, that was, the really important thing when I was first creating the recipes is I want to be able to eat this every day. And then the difference between the two butters is Tourlami Premium has a higher ratio of cocoa butter to coconut oil. And then Tourlami All-Purpose has a higher ratio of coconut oil to cocoa butter. So the premium butter is really going to be that hard butter that you need for laminating. And then Tourlami All-Purpose is a little bit softer, smoother. You can whip it up into a buttercream. You can make a ganache. You can make a beurre blanc sauce, a beurre monte sauce. And, it'll have that kind of smooth lusciousness. But I think it's actually really interesting when you're talking about the percentages of your products, because that was one of the things when I was doing a lot of recipe testing with the actual pastries that I was making, was I was noticing that I was using less butter in most of my recipes as well. I actually reduced the amount of butter. Normally I do 33% in my dairy-based croissants. I do 33% butter per piton, but now I've gone down to 30. Also the same when I'm looking at my chocolate chip cookies or things like that. So, and I think that's also because when we're looking at, some people have had issues when they're using other plant-based butters and then are trying to transition to Tourlami. I think that's the biggest thing that people have talked to me about. It's this isn't a one-to-one substitute for these other plant-based butters, because then it would just be one of these other plant-based butters. And so it's actually lowering the amount of Tourlami that you use compared to your other plant-based butters that you've used in the past are going to give you similar results. So I think that that's a really good starting point when you're thinking about it, because most of these other butters have really soft saturated fats, like palm oil as their first and their main saturated fat, or water is a huge ingredient. So they're going to perform very differently.
Laura, are you a vegetarian or a vegan?
I'm not.
You're not. And I have a loaded question here. Do you, and this is for both of you, do you believe that the Tourlami actually tastes better than traditional butter when it's used in these pastries?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like what's really important, yes, it's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. And I feel like when you eat the products made with Tourlami.
Even she can't pronounce it. See, I'm not alone.
You're not alone.
Don't feel bad.
In your head.
It's in my head because I was fine, I swear.
That's me. I have that effect. I'm rubbing off.
Yes, but when I feel like things taste delicious, and I think that for me that's the most important thing. And I wouldn't say that somebody who eats even family meals, when we put up family meal, I don't feel like everybody's walking away saying that tastes like it's plant-based. You're not
missing anything.
I don't think so.
I asked the question because when I had some of Susanna's cookies,
you wouldn't know.
You wouldn't. Not only wouldn't know, I think they're actually better than butter. Isn't that a company, Better Than Butter? Wasn't that a thing in the 1970s?
I can't believe it's not butter.
I can't believe it's not butter.
Which is really frustrating. It's
Fabio?
Genius marketing.
Yes.
I think that look, when I was first starting this company, flavor was really important to me. I think that was, the functionality and the flavor are the two things that were really the driving force for me to create this product. Another motivation was when we look at our, 68% of the global population is lactose intolerant. And our food systems, especially in the US, are not representative of that. So we're not even talking about vegans. We're talking about people who are lactose intolerant, people who want to reduce the amount of dairy they're consuming. There are a lot of reasons why you wouldn't eat butter. And I wanted to create a product so that, people who are lactose intolerant, who really want to have a cookie or a croissant, don't feel ill after eating it. And so, I wanted it to be at the same standard for the way that butters tasted, so that, when people are like, oh, this is really good for being plant-based, I actually take that as that is not a compliment when people say that to me, because I think that there is this stigma that, plant-based ingredients are not going to be as good. But I think that there's this new wave of plant-based food companies that are really creating these really high quality and really excellent products. And so I think that the consumer mentality is slowly shifting, that this is a subjectively good Queen Amman that's plant-based. This is a subjectively good buttercream that, is stable at room temperature. Subjectively good cookies, So yeah, I think that was the really important thing. Am I trying to be better than butter?
Let's destigmatize it though. Like,
yeah.
let's not.
No, I mean, like, butter is butter, and butter tastes good and works really well. I'm thinking about, all of the other people that don't want to consume butter for whatever reasons, and still have that same high quality. So that's kind of where I was thinking about it, even from the very beginning.
And how did you come up with Tourlami?
Yeah. After many a meltdown, who knew that, getting a trademark for a name was just going to be so anxiety provoking. But, one of the things that I was always thinking about was that I am making a product for food service professionals, not just pastry chefs. I want everybody to have access to this. And so I really wanted this to be, by chefs for chefs, that same kind of mentality. And so we looked at, my background is in French style pastries. And so I wanted to kind of pay tribute to the work that I had done in the past, the techniques that I had learned. And so we started looking at these French words. And so Tourlami comes from two French words, tourier and laminoir. So a tourier is the person in the French brigade system who's responsible for all dough production and manufacturing. And then a laminoir is a laminator or a sheeter. So, really thinking about the people that are using this butter, the equipment that they're using, and kind of having it be a very intentional name for a very intentional product. So that's
amazing.
Kind of where it came from.
I like that a lot.
So Laura, you said you're in R&D right now.
Mm-hmm.
What are you R&Ding? Like, can you give us a little sneak peek?
So we're R&Ding for like the fall menu and the winter menu. So just kind of trying to take, local seasonal seasonal ingredients, and just trying to, I don't want to talk too much about it.
Watch out, Andrea's she's a spy.
Can't give it away.
Well, also because nothing's finalized. So it's hard to say. And then it you
can tell me later.
Yeah, I feel like, it's a long process to R&D. So, and things change every week. From week to week, it's like, oh, instead of using this, why don't we use this? And it's like a whole ingredient change. So it's hard to say exactly because, and hopefully, like, this is the ending of our R&D, and like we're good for the season, but things could definitely be changing. But always, of course, try to work with like whatever is local and delicious. And for the fall and for the winter, pears and apples and quince and all that good stuff. So
nice.
That's what we're R&Ding.
I love the fact, and I don't, maybe it's just me, but when I think of plant-based butters, I always tend to like lean towards pastry and dessert stuff.
Sure.
But now, after you talked about the brown butter, like, why not saute fish in this? Why not do a sole meuniere finished with us?
Is the smoke
I mentioned
point...
white truffles and pasta, and butter.
Is it good for searing?
Yeah, it has a higher smoke point than dairy-based butter. So Tourlami Premium is 383 degrees Fahrenheit, and then Tourlami All-Purpose is around 375.
This is a really revolutionary product.
It really is.
Let's go back to brown butter. Does the butter turn like a amber color? Does it turn brown?
Yes.
And do you do anything differently than you would making normal brown butter?
Nope. I did exactly the same. Yeah. I just went for it. And was like, why not? Because it tastes really good, Yeah. So just alone. And a lot of times, like with other plant-based butters, if you taste it by itself, it's like not great, So when I tasted this for the first time, I was like, oh yeah, I feel like we could totally do brown butter with this, like 100%. And yeah, it worked out really, really, really well for sure.
Are you gonna go home and try it?
As she's
I'm like
describing
watching the wheels turning in his
picturing
head.
like dropping sage leaves into it, maybe a little ravioli.
Absolutely.
Frying capers.
But then it's also white truffle season starting kind of right now. So yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, you got to get John some.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How does Tourlami come for the Chef's Warehouse? How is it packed?
Yeah. So right now the premium butter comes in a case of 36 1-pound blocks, and then Tourlami all-purpose comes in a 30-pound block. Although we're probably going to be rolling out a 36 1-pound block case for the all-purpose as well, just because this butter comes in frozen. Then you're going to keep it in your refrigerator, but then you use the butter at room temperature. I think that's truly the most important factor when you're working with the butters, is that room temperature is really everything, because there is cocoa butter in the recipe. It's going to be really hard. So by creating a smaller 1-pound block package for the all-purpose, it will allow you to temper the butter instead of having to use all 30 pounds or break it into smaller pieces for later use.
What's the shelf life?
So it's up to a year in the freezer, 180 days in the refrigerator, and then, pull it out 2 to 5 hours before working with the butter or overnight. And till it gets to, the 60 to 70 degree range is really that kind of sweet spot that we kind of say you should work with the butter in. But yeah, the shelf life's great.
Okay, so we ask all of our guests, so I'm going to ask each of you. I know you are cooking a lot professionally, but do you cook at home?
No.
No, okay.
Rarely.
She doesn't have time. She's
I know, she's the pastry chef at 11 Madison Park. I got it.
I mean, can I? Sure.
Okay.
Are
there things you have to have in your pantry at all times?
No, I'm lucky if I have food in my pantry.
Okay.
He's got one of
Are you
those
like a
New York
cereal
City
chef? Like you eat
apartment.
the cereal?
No, I don't even I'm serious. The only food I have in my house is cat food because I have a cat.
Okay, so Laura's pantry staples, meow mix.
Yes.
Yeah, I really don't have. Maybe I have eggs. I do like to have eggs if I had to pick something.
We always ask for the 5 pantry staples that you have to have. So cat food and eggs. So far.
Sounds like a New York City apartment.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I shouldn't have said that.
You can always change your answer,
Okay, let's see, what else? I mean, I always have oat milk.
Okay.
And let's see. I really enjoy to have cheese.
Okay.
in my fridge if I can, but I don't always. Let's see. Yeah, I don't even know. And granola. I like granola.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Because that's easy to just eat sometimes.
Right. With
would
your
say
oat
that.
milk?
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Susanna.
Yes.
5 things you cannot live without. If I were to open your pantry right now, they're there.
I think that it's hilarious. I'm like the total end of the, other end of the spectrum here. I have like an overflowing fridge. I think 5 things that, obviously Tourlami all-purpose is always in our fridge for all the things that we want to make at home. Chili crisp is a big one. I put that on almost everything.
I actually have chili crisp.
Yeah, there we go. Then we can do
All right, Laura, we'll put that one in for Laura.
I have 2 different kinds in my
Eggs
fridge.
and chili crisp. There you go. Although I don't eat eggs anymore. So let's see. Okay, so chili crisp, Tourlami all-purpose. We always have rice noodles around. This is going to be super controversial. Is it Rao's or Rao's?
Rao's.
Really? Yeah. I've heard people say Rao's. Anyways, we always have Rao's. I love Rao's. I could just eat that.
The pasta sauce.
And I don't know. We always have tofu. Got to get protein.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. We have everything. Look, I go to the farmer's market. I like to have home cooked meals.
Yeah.
I think that's important to me because I want to make sure that I'm getting protein and a lot of the I don't know. I don't want to get takeout. And I like the art of just the routine of coming home and cooking and eating together.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw down the gauntlet because this episode was so great.
Yep.
If you are a sales rep of the Chef's Warehouse, if you are a customer of the Chef's Warehouse, you need to go and put an order in for the Tourlami butter. It's just try
100%.
it.
Yes.
It's that good.
And if you don't like it, John Magazzino will personally refund your purchase, everyone.
And add in a white truffle,
Wow, that's a big...
Yeah,
Add
exactly.
a case to my order,
it's all
please.
going on. Thank you so
Laura,
much for taking
Yeah.
time out of your busy
you're
day to join
welcome.
us.
Absolutely.
Susanna, thank you for everything you do for the Chef's Warehouse.
Thank you.
She's tireless. I see her at
Yep.
every food expo we do. She's traveling around the country.
Two of the
getting behind
hardest
this
working women in
product.
Manhattan are in this room.
Yeah.
I can't disagree
So
with that.
thank you so much for your time and being here with us today. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Meet Iliada Extra Virgin Olive Oil, the liquid gold that transforms everyday meals into gourmet experiences. Picture this, a drizzle of Iliada Extra Virgin Olive Oil in a sizzling pan, the aroma of fresh herbs, and the sound of a perfectly seared steak. With Iliada, cooking becomes an art, and your dishes will dazzle every sense. Are you looking for a multi-awarded extra virgin olive oil that is ideal for every occasion? Try Iliada Kalamata PDO to cook and fry, or just sprinkle over your dishes. It's ideal for grilled fish, white and red meat, pasta, vegetables, sauces, and salad dressings. Top chefs, hotels, restaurants, and catering experts choose Iliada every day because it brings out the natural flavor of every ingredient. Don't miss out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Ingredient Insiders. Follow us on Instagram at Ingredient Insiders. You can find the products we've discussed on today's episode at chefswarehouse.com or at your favorite specialty retailer.